am live. Bum, bum, bum. Mm. Bum, bum, dum, dum. I want candy. Maybe. Probably. I'll grab it. No one's in the live stream yet. I love coffee. I love coffee. Sometimes you just need some caffeine. That's when I drink coffee. Hi to the couple of you who jumped in so far. I'm going to start chatting about some this week, next week, in a minute, and then any questions that you have. So if you want to start putting them in the chat, I'll get to them in the order that you send them. Okay, 11:45. So I'm going to chat really quick about this week, next week, answer any questions that you guys might have from there. For this week, a couple of you have already started, not that many. So I want to make sure I go through the whole assignment for this week, what we're doing for the week. So this week is group discussions. By Monday, the groups got me their discussions. Actually, they were really good. They got me them pretty early. So all of that information's up. So we can skip over the deadline for Monday for everyone. Where we are right now, we have the PowerPoints up, and yeah, they both got me. I put them up as a PDF. PowerPoints up for both groups and discussion questions up for both groups. This week, it's just the memory and social. So Carly, you're in the memory group, so you have to still reply to the social one as well. So for this week, there are 2 discussion forums running. One is for memory, one is for social. You have to reply to both forums. If you are not in either of the groups, you have to reply to 2 discussion questions in each of those forums. So that's going to be 4 total. If you are in one of the groups, like Carly is in memory, what you're going to have to do is reply to 2 discussion questions in the other group. So for Carly, she'll reply to 2 in the social group. And if you're here and you're in the social group, you're going to reply to 2 discussion questions in the memory group. Then you have to moderate your own forum that's going on. Moderating your own forum refers to your one single discussion question as required to moderate. A good team player for your group, you can also help moderate their questions as well, which is why I word that a little open-ended. But that's not required. That's just being a good teammate. When to be a good teammate is if your question doesn't have a lot of classmates replying to it and answering that question. If you find that you only have like 3 replies and one of your group members has like 7, 8, 9, help them out. That could be a really good time for some teamwork. As long as someone in your group answers the question, that's fine with me. But with that said, if there's questions that go unanswered, that's the accountability of the person whose discussion question it is. That's why I had you all only choose 1 instead of having 10 total and ending up with like 2 each. You're going to be responsible only for the 1 question that you submitted to me. If you want to help out your group, I'm sure they will appreciate that, and that shows some really good teamwork. But your grade specifically for moderating the forum, you're accountable for your 1 discussion question. So when you are answering the 2 questions on the other forum, just make sure it's more than 1 sentence. 2 to 3 sentences is fine. Just make sure you're adding something to the question. When you are moderating your forum, you're going to see that person that replied to your question. And you're going to, again, not just 1 sentence. 2 to 3 sentences is more than enough, but you're going to spend more than 1 sentence. And what you're doing there is I agree with you, I disagree with you. Or it looks like someone else that replied to this question has the same stance as you, or you guys seem like you guys could debate this. We actually saw something about this in the article and then refer to the article where it comes from. Whatever makes sense to do, but linking agreement, linking disagreement, generating some debate, and talking about what was in the article. Remember that everyone else in the class, they looked at your article, but they didn't read through it in detail. I only asked that they spend the 10 minutes skimming through the article. So you're the expert on the article, they're not. They might have missed something completely in skimming through the article. So what you're doing is you are kind of directing them wherever is necessary. So I want more than 1 sentence doing that, but you don't have to give a full paragraph about it. 2 to 3 sentences is more than enough. And that's what we're doing this week. Now, deadlines are important for this week. So everything now isn't going to be officially due until Friday, but I will ask that everyone in the class today, ideally, but today or tomorrow, reply to their 2 classmates in each forum. The reason I ask that you do that ideally by today, but really by tomorrow for sure, is that it gives the people in the groups that are presenting right now, it gives them time to go and moderate their forum without worrying about last second posts really coming through that they checked at, let's say, 2 o'clock on Friday, and then someone made a post at 9 p.m. on Friday. Now, if you make your post really late on Friday, it's technically going to be due on Friday, and I'll ask that the group for memory um, takes a look at some point over the weekend. I won't grade these forms at all until the beginning of next week because of that, to try to still reply to you. But if all of your replies are coming on Friday, it's not a good look. So try to get in today or tomorrow for that. Help the memory group out, help the social group out. That way it's a little easier for them moderating their forums. I will recommend to the people in the memory and social group to not all do them at once. So don't just go in on Friday to answer all the questions, because you might have 8 to 10 questions that are asked on there. And that could be quite a bit of work to do all in one sitting. So I would recommend to go and reply to 1 or 2 of them a couple different times. And that's all we're doing for this week. This week is all about those group discussion grades. If you are not in the memory or social group, then you just have that 1 grade for 5% of your grade of replying to the classmates. You're going to end up submitting 4 replies then. Those 4 replies are 5% of your grade. So not the hardest way to get 5% of your final grade this week. And that's of your final grade, not just a 5-point assignment. It's of your final grade. But if you're in the group that's going, you have 2 assignments that are graded. You have, if you're in the memory group, the 2 replies that you do to the social group is 1 grade for this week. And then you have a different grade for your actual group discussion that the other, I think, 3 groups already had that grade in their system from doing it in class. We're just doing that online because of the circumstances. And the other thing I want to talk about for today is next week with personality. And then any questions that you guys might have the rest of the way, as long as you need, as long as you have questions, I'll answer them until whenever we finish. Okay, so for personality, next week, if you click on, just checking the folder, the dates for that, the folder's name is 420 to 424. Remember, I label everything by the dates for you. You can always see what topic is for the dates in the syllabus as well. But you can always look ahead. Everything's now up for you all for the rest of the semester. I just have to catch up on some grades. And then everything is completely caught up for us. And those grades should, maybe later on today, I'll get last week's forum. And then I just have to update some participation grades from the classroom. And we're completely up to date. Now, when you click on the personality folder, there's 7 things that I have for you guys to do next week, which is just a basic checklist. There's only 1 graded assignment. What you'll see in that folder is a bunch of information about personality. You're going to have a PowerPoint about personality. You're going to have my 10-minute lecture is actually 14 minutes and 10 seconds. So it's going to be the longest of all of the ones that I did. There's a lot of information in personality to cover, and I wanted to make sure I focused on what your assignment will be about. So I also posted a second video. That one's 7 minutes long. The second video is just me going over the psychodynamic mind, Sigmund Freud, the id, ego, superego. So if as you read through that, you don't understand it, take a look, because it's just an example that I would use it with you guys in class, just an example to make sure you understand it, because that is incredibly important for this week to understand. So 2 things really focused on then. One is the id, ego, superego, so the psychodynamic mind. And the other one for next week that I'm going to focus on is the self and self-concept, and that's going to relate to your assignment for the week. There's also a folder with some extra videos on personality, just like I've been doing every week. Those are just there for extra information as you need. If you understand everything about personality, then those are optional, but I highly encourage you watching them. The last thing other than the assignment that's in there is I put a 10-minute video that is up in that folder going over our final papers, and that will be in every folder that we have for the rest of the semester. You could see that basically anywhere that you look, and it'll be up there for you guys going over both of the paper options. So if you have been stopping at the live stream and paying attention to some of the announcements, the behavior modification paper, you can still do it if you want. unless you're already in the middle of it, I don't encourage you doing it anymore. We're already so late in the semester. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about it just because of the way things have gone. And the truth is, I would say probably well over half of you, what you were planning on doing just wouldn't work now that we are social distancing and staying in the house. So many of you guys were doing things like going out to eat or going out to buy yourself a new outfit or get your nails painted or whatever it might be, using behaviors like going to the gym and trying to change certain study habits and things like that. And a lot of the way that those things are going to work just wouldn't work now. It's going to be so different than it would be uh, when we're back in the classroom. If that paper doesn't make sense to do on paper modification, which I imagine is going to be most of us, I highly then encourage you all to, instead of doing that paper, to do just the traditional research paper that I have in the syllabus. I also have mentioned in that paper, in that video. So make sure you take a look at that whenever you're planning on starting doing. Or take a look at that. It gives you some extra information about it. I try to break it down just like I would if we were in the classroom. And the last thing that you have there is a short paper on personality. That short paper on personality is due on April 24th, so on the Friday of next week. It can be submitted to me anytime by end of day on Friday. You're going to submit it to me right through that Dropbox that's there. So if you click on the assignment, you can submit right there. If you have trouble with it, you can email me the assignment, but you're submitting it just like you were submitting the exam. For that assignment, you are writing a 2-page paper comparing yourself and self-concept. There's a structured guidelines towards doing that. You're going to have to, the big thing that I would say is you have to make sure that you dedicate a solid few minutes, probably, up to 30 minutes would be ideal, but at least 15 minutes that you dedicate to the critical thinking before you start writing this paper. When you're doing that, what you have to do is you're answering the question of I am ... And what you're doing when you answer that question is you're going to write down what pops into your mind. But what I mean by that is I don't want you to evaluate your material. A lot of times people have evaluation apprehension, which means they don't want to give an idea unless they think about if that's a good idea. I want you to skip that part when you're writing ideas down. I just want you to write what comes to your mind. In practice, what happens very often is this. Hard to think of the first couple things, then you get to the first couple things, and then you hit writer's block that can last anywhere from a couple minutes all the way up to like 20 minutes, that you're struggling to think of anything else. You have 3 things down, maybe 10 things down, maybe 15. And now you can't think of anything else to write down. You have to get through that part. That can potentially last for like a half an hour. It can be a little frustrating. You get through that part. Eventually, you will have some more things pop into your mind. You write those things down. After you get to that list, and you should have at least 20 things down in that list. After that's done, you go and now you're going to go one by one of those 20 things, and you're going to now evaluate them. So now you're going to look at them one by one and say, okay, I am this, but am I really this? Is this something I really care about? Or is this not that important to me? And that's going to specifically be looking at what's in yourself and what's in your self-concept. The bottom line is, as you'll see in the video, and I'm not going to go into, unless you have questions, I won't go into that here for too much detail. But what you will find is most likely the things that you wrote down at the top of your list before you got to that writer's block are going to be things that overlap between things that are in both yourself and self-concept. So things that help you both self-actualize and get positive regard. Well, the short answer, and there's a lot more in the video about that, is the things that give us self-actualization are things that we genuinely like doing. Things that we really are then, because we genuinely like doing them. But that doesn't always overlap with what gives us positive regard. We get positive regard from the pats on the back we get from other people, the respect, praise, acceptance that we get from other people. Well, we get those from doing things that are worthy of those. So we get pats on the back for doing things that are worthy of a pat on the back. So it's something that we're good at. If you're a good singer, someone might say, wow, you're a good singer. But if you're not, probably more like me, where someone's going to say, hey, who sings that? Why don't we keep it that way? They don't always overlap. Now, ideally, they will as much as we possibly can. And I describe that when they do overlap, I always describe that as that's our happy place. And the video that I posted goes into a little bit more about that. I also have one of my last live stream that's up. I went into a lot of detail because the students had some questions about it. So you could take a look at that if you wanted some more information. I can timestamp it for you. Just email me and I'll let you know where to look in the timestamp. So when they overlap, that's our happy place. We do that as much as we can. And that's going to probably be the first few things that you wrote down. You're going to probably find that those first few things are things that you have in yourself and your self-concept, that they're in your real self. They're things that you are good at doing and like to do. But then as you got through that writer's block, you might start to see that you wrote down some things that you're just good at doing, but that you don't just necessarily like doing them. You don't care that you're good at doing them. We all have a lot of things that fit that boat. We all have a whole lot of things that we do them because we're good at doing them. We might not care so much that we're good at doing them, but the fact that we have talent, the fact that we get pats on the back persuades us to do it. Because the bottom line is life has both good and bad things that happen every day. Well, when we're having a bad day, sometimes we just need that pat on the back. So sometimes we will compromise self-actualization for the betterment of positive regard. And when things are going great, that's where we can compromise positive regard and work on me. So that's what this paper is doing. And very simply, this paper is actually a very common thing that someone might do when talking with a therapist or a counselor. When someone gets to the expression of when it rains, it pours, this is very often an exercise that we will do because it helps a lot. All this exercise does, and really all talking to a counselor does, is it starts to bring yourself and self-concept closer together because you start to actually look at what is in yourself and what is in your self-concept. Because the last thing I'll mention here is, well, what's in our self isn't necessarily in our conscious mind. We're aware consciously of our self-concept, but not necessarily what's in our real self. That operates in that unconscious mind. So without really stopping and thinking about it, we're going to trick ourselves. We're going to be working towards things in our self-concept. So that's the person we think we are, not necessarily the person we really are. And we can get ourselves in trouble by doing that. Okay, beyond that, and that's the paper. It's a 2-page assignment. It overlaps as both a self-help type of activity, which is something that's important. You probably could see that from the behavior modification assignment, but I like to do that with students. But it also overlaps with some really important information from personality from the chapter. And specifically, I'm guiding that around what's called the humanistic approach. So you could see that in the PowerPoint says Carl Rogers, the humanistic psychologist. And if you're familiar, even though we aren't specifically going into detail about him in this class because he overlaps in so many other classes, Abraham Maslow is also a humanistic psychologist. So if you've ever seen the hierarchy of needs, and if you are more interested in having, I can send you tons of information about it. If you are familiar with hierarchy of needs, that also falls within humanistic approach to psychology and to personality. Beyond that, it's just what questions you might have. We don't have a lot of you guys here right now. This is still going to be on my YouTube channel for anyone who's not here to take a look at. But let me know what questions you might have. We'll cover them here. Hopefully that then helps people that might take a look at the live stream in the future. And otherwise, we'll finish up the live stream early from today if you don't have any questions. So don't feel obligated to hang here for the next half hour unless you do have questions. But if you don't have questions, I would certainly hope that you feel good about this week and next week's assignment. And then next week, I'll make sure I talk a little bit about the papers again, as well as exam 3, because those will be coming up the last few weeks. crazy, but we actually are in the last few weeks. After this week, we have 3 weeks left. You going for a walk with your mamas? Hopefully that was obvious, but I was talking to my dog there. Coffee! So let me see if we have any questions through emails. Well, it looks like we're good there. All right. I'm going to hang out here for a few minutes, see if anybody has any questions that do pop up. But if we don't end up having questions, I'll end up ending the stream in like 5 minutes. Makes things a little easier for when they post to YouTube. It is been brought up to me. If you don't have any questions you want to bring up here, but you have questions, you can always email me privately. We can always schedule times to talk over Zoom. I can always hop into the channel, into the YouTube live stream channel with just me and one person. I can always Zoom with you. We can email. We can talk over the phone. Basically, as I'm trying to be accessible as many ways for you as I possibly can. All right. I'm going to hang out here for a couple more minutes, but everyone left the channel, but I'll hang out just in case anybody pops in for another 2 minutes. I think I can safely say that stream is ending here. So I'm going to close things down. Email me if you do have any questions, and we'll chat.